There you go. It's just informed us that you're being recorded. So officially, everybody, welcome to Global Lawyers of Canada, along with Practical Law Canada from Thomson and Reuters. We have Allison Bale joining us today and Martin Halpern. Allison, Martin, thank you for coming today and sharing with us how we can get practical with practical law. So just as a reminder for everyone who's just joining, we're going to do a Q&A session at the end, but please drop any questions you have into the chat box throughout the session, and then we'll get to them as quickly as we can once we get through the presentation. So Allison, Martin, over to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys for having us. We're so happy to be here. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to share my screen with you. And you should see just a quick PowerPoint, just, listing all of us and our email addresses in case, you do have some questions after the fact, or if you want to add us on LinkedIn or something like that, feel free. So obviously Siobhan, all of you probably know her as the president of the BC chapter of the Global Lawyers of Canada. And then there's myself. I'm an executive customer learning consultant for Thomson Reuters. And I've been around a little while. I'm for BC. I deal with BC and the Yukon areas. And I've been around about 25 years now with the company, mostly as a trainer, actually. And I am located, as mentioned just a few minutes ago, in the Vancouver area. And then we have the lovely, or the guru, as I call him. His wife did not appreciate that because now, now she's going to have to.
I did.
You appreciated it, but your wife not so much.
I'll make a lot of use of that one, Allison.
But we have Martin Halpern on the line, and he is our solutions consultant for Practical Law Canada, and just an amazing wealth of knowledge that he has on the service and just the area of knowledge management and such. So we're going to have him actually start us off with a little information about himself as well as that sort of area. And while you're chatting, Martin, I'm then going to share my screen again with, or I'm actually going to close this off. So you go right ahead and start chatting.
Okay, nice to meet everyone. I've been a lawyer now for about 30 years, and a little over 30 years, in private practice, in large firms and smaller firms, in my own firm, in-house for one of the large banks in Canada, as well as at the TSX. So I've really had a good overview of a lot of different legal environments. I'm also a knowledge management lawyer by profession. There was pretty well no such thing as KM, as we call it, or knowledge management, when I started on Bay Street quite a number of years back. But of course, it's a discipline that's grown up and developed in exponential forms in the legal profession since then. And I recently joined Thomson Reuters, as Allison mentioned, as the solutions consultant for Practical Law Canada. And in that regard, I touch on all aspects and segments of our customer base to really kind of help advance the promotion and the product, integrating it into various legal environments. It's a really one I believe in strongly as a know-how system. I think any of you who have run across it, and if you haven't seen it yet, you're going to find it quite illuminating for its content-rich areas and the way that it really can help, give you, ground-up guidance, large firm, small firm, legal department, wherever you're working in life, to really get the best access to materials. And, over time in my own work, we found as practical law began to take hold, it was, of course, very central in the United Kingdom and even in the last decade or so in the United States. And now we're pleased to have Practical Law Canada with a lot of rich content being developed and maintained. And we'll talk about that as we go along. So by the way, that was basically an intro to me, and happy to let Allison drive the ship now and chime in as we see fit. Thanks very much.
Yes, chime in whenever. Perfect. Okay. Perfect. Now, can everybody actually see my screen? It says, Practical Law Canada. Yes. Okay. Perfect. Thanks, Siobhan. Awesome. So I've already logged in to the service. I thought that would be, easier. So we're already there and ready to go. And as Marty was saying, This particular service is very much a know-how style of service. So if you think of like a Westlaw Next Canada, or if you think of like a Quick Law or Canly or things like that, where you're grabbing case law and legislation and you know, some commentary and things like that, this is different. You need to know how to do something. We've got ways that you can figure out how to do that. We're going to provide you with precedents and just, you know, honestly make your life a tiny bit easier. So practical law, as right in the name, it's very practical service. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through, you can see the practice areas actually listed here on the screen. So we're going to go through those, but we're also going to go through all of the various resources. Now, the resources on our service are being updated by a special team. So over here in the sort of upper right, it says meet the team. I'm just going to click on that, and you can see all of our lawyer editors that are working on the service, and you can actually see, you know, by the area as well. So if you're interested in, you know, commercial real estate, you know, you can see which lawyer or lawyers are working on that particular practice area and get an information on where we stole them from and their background, of course. Okay. Now I'm just going to click the logo. It just takes us right back to the home page. But at any point, you know, if you're using the service and you want to see who's working on it, you can always go there. Okay. Now the resources that they're working on and are maintaining are right here when I click this little resources tab. So we have several in here, and again, not cases and legislations, it's very, very different. So we have something called practice notes in here. So if you would like to get sort of a clear, up-to-date, you know, kind of explanation on a particular area of law, it's basically like a guidance tool, sort of like a commentary on, you know, hey, I'm dealing with a shareholder agreement. I don't, you know much about that. It will give you all the information on that. Standard documents and clauses are built into the system as well, and those are your precedents. So what's really neat about those, and actually all of these maintained resources, one, they're maintained, but with the standard documents and clauses in particular, they are not just templates. So I'm going to show you those. We also have something called drafting notes built into it. So you get a great sort of idea of the area of law at the same time as actually, you know, filling in that particular precedent. You have a better understanding of what you're doing. Like, I'm filling in this agreement, but I don't really, I've never done this before. I don't really understand it. We have some drafting notes to go along with it. So it's very, very handy. And as I said, maintained as well. We have checklists in the system as well. So we do have things like just regular sort of checklists, which they could be in chart form or bullet point form, and they just go step by step in what you need to do. I mean, who doesn't love that? But there's also some infographics, which are really quite cool, and they're more like a flow chart sometimes, and it will lead you again sort of step by step through the process of whatever it is that you're working on at the time. We also have something called Toolkits, and those are my favorite. They combine all four of these. So if you can find a toolkit on point, that is a great place to start, okay? Because it will lead you to appropriate documents for that particular area. So we're going to have a look at that in just a minute. Just to mention a couple other things that we have in the system as well, we do have a glossary built in, and this is really, again, a learning tool. So you're not going to know everything. I certainly don't. I can guarantee that. But this will help you with those particular areas of law, those practice areas like corporate commercial, you know, securities, mergers, acquisitions, things like that, finance, employment law. It will give you a glossary here where you can type in terms if you wish to look them up, or you can just simply click through and then you can find, you know, what it is that you're looking for. Okay, we're all kind of looking for a haircut, but in here, it actually stands for a finance term for discount or loss. But if you did not know that, now you do. So as I say, the glossary is actually really quite handy, and it's actually built into the system. So as we're going through documents, you're going to see some hypertext links directly to the glossary, and it doesn't actually leave the screen. It will open up the lovely little definition in a separate box so you can get a better feel for that term and then continue on your merry way. Okay, so I'm just going to click the logo again, popping back. A couple other tools that we're going to, you know, go over briefly as well, just so you can see kind of everything that we have. We do have a Provincial Qa service in here, the actual feature where you can compare the law across Canada for various areas. So we're going to talk about that. And then we do have some market analysis built in as well. And there's a service called What's Market. If you've ever had to go to, CEDAR or Edgar and go to those security sites and pull out these huge deals and then sit there and compare them, well, we can do it for you. So this will create a lovely little chart that you can download and you're done. So I will show you that. We also have some current awareness, so there are some legal updates. Those are written by our lawyer editors, so feel free, of course, when you're in here to check those out as well. Okay.
I was just going to add
jump in.
As one thing here, Allison, as you emphasize the maintenance, and the fact is, like, as Allison takes you through the system, you'll see that it's very dynamic in terms of many knowledge repositories are very static. I mean, you're sort of pulling something and you don't necessarily have the feeling that it's kept up to date or kept current. But you'll find with this system that because we've got such an experienced team of lawyers devoting hundreds and hundreds of hours every month to ensure that materials are updated, that you're really getting current and live and up-to-date materials. And I think it's a huge win for all of you as you're working in legal areas. So just want to emphasize that.
Oh yeah, no, that's exactly right. Exactly right. So you're going to see throughout, as Martin was saying, maintained. So it's maintained by those lawyer editors. So it's constantly being updated and they're constantly looking at that particular area and just make sure everything is on point within our system. Okay. Now, the areas that I mentioned here, I actually jumped into resources right off the bat, but I did sort of point out the different areas that we have. We have capital market securities, commercial real estate, commercial transactions, competition, corporate and M&A, employment finance. Brand new one, we have insolvency and restructuring as well, and of course, our litigation component with corporate and commercial. So now, for subscription wise, you can technically subscribe to all of it if you want, of course. And I'm not a sales rep, so don't worry, I'm not pushing anything, but just letting you know you can actually buy pieces of it as well. So if you really just wanted capital market securities and corporate and M&A and say finance, you can also piece it together if necessary, because you may not deal with insolvency and restructuring. So why get it? So just to let you know that as well. All right, now on the main page, we have a couple different things. We do have a history, which tracks the last year's worth of everything that a person has done within the system. We have favorites that you can add throughout the system as well. So as you hit a page, you're like, I need to go back to here later, click create a favorite for it. Okay. We also have alerts built into the system. These are awesome. And I'm going to mention them actually when we're on a document or in a document a little bit later. And you will have a little bit of control over your email preferences and such. You can even change your password and things within this little icon here, the little person. Okay. Down below, actually, our practice areas, if I go down here a little bit, we do have some feature, we call these widgets, but it does show recent developments within the system. It's another link to What's Market. And there's this really cool feature called What Are You Working On? So we've just been talking a little bit about who the heck is working on this service. So those lovely lawyer editors. Well, this What Are You Working On is a direct connection to them. So not only do you get technical and research support with our service, you also get a direct email to the lawyer editors, which are the services it's not provided. So Practical Law is very special in that. So you could actually email the lawyer editors and say, I'm working on this, and then they will give suggestions on various, documents or things that, you might want to have a look at. So very, very handy.
It looks like a simple tool, but it's extremely, extremely effective for all of you as you're using the system, because you really will have access. It's not that they'll do research for you or legal opinions, but they will help to give you the guidance you need to get the resources you are looking for in practical law, especially if you're not able at first bat to find something. So that's a real win-win in the system altogether.
Definitely, definitely. As I mentioned, we do have some email updates as well. We do have global content. There's, a UK platform as well, and US, etc. We also have some automated documents which use a service called Contract Express, which some of you might be familiar with. There are a few that are included with various subscriptions. If we have time, we can always have a little peek at that. We also have presentation materials in here. So there are, I think, over 75, and Martin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, about 75, I think, PowerPoint presentations that are built in that are able to be downloaded. You can put your own logo in there and, change anything that you see fit.
Yeah, not to be overlooked, those presentation materials give you a real leg up, especially when you're trying to get business in terms of clients externally to you, this really gives you that starting point for presentations in all sorts of contexts and in legal departments with the businesses you're serving, etc. So they're really very good.
Perfect. We also have some short form resources. Now you can access those the other ways too. You can browse and you can search and stuff for them, but we actually pulled them out because sometimes you just need a quick precedent. So we do have a link here for short form resources as well. All right. So that's kind of a little bit of the layout, kind of what's in the service. Let's actually get in there and look at some stuff. So there are a few ways that you can access the content. You can browse by clicking links, of course, and you can browse by practice area, but you can also browse actually by resource. I'm just going to show you both real quick in a second. You can also come up to the top here and use this search box, and you can use the predictive text, which will bring up document links for you, or you can actually run a full search if you want throughout the content within Practical Law. So we'll have a little peek at that as well. Now for browsing purposes, as I mentioned, you can browse by practice area or you can browse by resource. So whatever works for you. So let's say in this instance, we're interested in say corporate and M&A. I can click on that, and what it does is it gives me the legal topics within that. So we have business corporations, joint ventures, private M&A, public M&A, partnerships, etc. So those are all there, and then you're like, okay, well, you know what? I'm interested in joint ventures. So when you click that, what it does is it brings up the listing of all of the documents that we have included within that particular area. It's going to start with some editor picks. So those lawyer editors we were talking about, they picked out some that they thought, you know, might be of use to you. And then on the left, we have the ability to kind of sort of filter out to specific areas. So there's the practice notes, again, that sort of lovely guide area or commentary that explains various things. And then we have our standard documents and clauses, again, those precedents, checklists, toolkits, and some legal updates. You can also just scroll and it will load them all up for you. Okay, now you can, as I mentioned earlier, toolkits are a really great place to start. So you could click on toolkits, the screen will refresh and bring you up the toolkits that are specific to this one. And we have a joint ventures toolkit, which we could pop into. Okay, however, I'm going to return to the home page. If say you were interested in just seeing, you know, what toolkits we have for all areas or for a specific area, but not just all the way down to say joint ventures, but you wanted corporate and M&A or you want capital market securities, you can click on the resource tab instead, click on toolkits, and then what it does is it goes by practice area, but it will load all of them. So it doesn't go all the way down, say, to joint venture, but it will list that if I were to choose, you know, corporate and M&A. Let's this time go into capital market securities. We'll just have a little peek at another area. And then now it's loading again, just all the toolkits. As I said, they're a really good starting point because they combined those, you know, practice notes. They combined the templates or the precedents within the system into one spot for you. So you'll see all of the different ones that are going on in here. Issuer bids, we've got private placements, we have, you know, a shareholder agreement toolkit. Okay, underwriting agreements, warrant offerings, etc. Let's say we're interested in a shareholder agreement. Maybe it's our first time, you know, dealing with one of those. We may want to, you know, get a little bit of a background on it, get some, you know, the actual agreement, maybe some checklists, things like that. So why not start out in the toolkit? You can see here it says that it's resources to assist in preparing and evaluating shareholder agreements. And then it goes into a little bit of an explanation of it with, again, the glossary terms that I was showing you a little bit earlier. And see how it pops up, you get an understanding of it, close it, and continue on. Okay. Now, once it's given that sort of little brief overview for the area, it will go into the various types of documents. And in here, we have some practice notes. So there's a shareholder agreement commentary, there's shareholder protections, and the shareholder agreement explained. So if you, again, you're not familiar with this, great learning tool, okay? But let's say, you know, we're interested in shareholder protections as an example. So I'm going to click on that. Okay, and now what it's going to do is just load that up. These are very thorough. So some of them will come with a table of contents just to make it a little easier to kind of get around because they're quite long. And maybe you're only interested in substantive protections. You can click that and actually jump to that spot in the document. So it makes it a lot easier for you to get around. The bottom right, you'll see a little arrow here. It says top. That just allows me to scroll all the way to the top very easily in case I want to just go right back and start from the beginning. Okay, can also again use the table of contents and click on again anything to kind of jump around. Now, you'll notice here just gives a little bit of what this is. It discusses the contractual protections, shareholders in corporation with a few shareholders, blah, blah, blah. And then on the right-hand side, it says maintained, again, by those lawyer editors. There's a resource history, so changes can be made to documents. We will let you know what those changes are. And that brings me to the alerts in just 1 second as well, because that's going to help you out in case you are wanting to know if changes are made. But I'll just say here, it tells you the resource type, and it also tells you the jurisdictions, Canada, common law, and Quebec for this particular area, okay? One other thing, you also have a related content button here. Now, as I scroll down, it will actually go up here to the upper right for us, and we can click that. It will bring out a lovely little tab here, which gives us related content in practical law. So if you hadn't gone from a toolkit and you had actually started in this particular document, this would say, you know, hey, maybe you want to check out some of these things instead, or in addition to. Okay. There's also an other resources option. Now, if you are subscribing to a couple of our other services like ProView, with basically just a loose leaf service, or Westlaw Next Canada, it will also link you in to those two services. They're all connected. Okay. Just click the arrow to close that up, and then you're good to go and keep reading through. And oh, there's a definition. What's a private corporation? Okay, I know that now, and continue on. Okay.
I mean, think of your practice notes as sort of your starting point
Exactly.
to get you a good and solid overview of an area of the law from a practical point of view. They're not legal treatises like you would find in a textbook. They're more intended to give you really the nuts and bolts in terms of practice, and then you move sort of inward, as Allison will take you further into looking at the actual resources and documents that are available to you to start to work from those areas. So the practice point notes are a really important and useful starting point for any area of the law that we cover in the system.
Kind of get this holistic view of the area, a better understanding for sure, and as Martin said, incredibly helpful. On the right-hand side, though, if you wanted to, maybe download this for later and read it, or if you wanted to print it, or you wanted to email it, you do have all of the lovely icons over here on the right. We also have the ability to annotate in this service. If you're interested, of course, you can say, hey, this is awesome. Or what have you. And you can even share with contacts. So if you are at a firm with multiple people, multiple passwords, you can actually share the note with others, so they'll see your note on the document as well, and they will know it's awesome. But you can click on, save, and then it's there with the date and the time available, and who actually, created the note as well. You can also do that throughout, so you can highlight any text, add a note, make it all pretty colors, copy with or without the reference. So we do have some additional functionality within practical law, within the documents themselves as well. Okay. Right-hand side, though, we have the ability to copy a link, which allows you to, say, send that to somebody else or put it into a document. The only thing is that the person will have to have access to Practical Law Canada. So little forewarning on that. Because they'll need a password to get in. Otherwise, of course, you could do the normal sort of email or download full text if you needed to. Okay. On the right-hand side as well, we have the ability to expand, which kind of cleans up the document. So if you're like me and you're staring at a screen, which we all are a lot lately, it can be very hard on the eyes. And so it actually expands so that you really basically just see the document on there. And then the icon is just here in the upper right. You just click it, it will bring everything back for you. Okay. And then last but not least, and what I've mentioned before, is the alert. So let's say this is updated. Maybe some new information has come out and we've updated this particular practice note, or we've updated standard document or clause or any document within the system. You can set up an alert, and it's the easiest alert ever to set up because you just click it. It has your email address in, and you click on Save Alert, and that is it. And so what happens is when a change is made to this, you are emailed and you're notified of what the change to the document is. I think it's really important for all the documents, but in particular, say a standard document or clause, maybe you've downloaded a precedent, say that shareholder agreement, you've downloaded it and I don't know, the law changes, there's some content that needs to be changed in it, and it's changed like the next day. Well, if you're using that document, you might want to know if it has, if anything, if it's not valid anymore or anything has changed. Okay, so that alert is a really handy feature within the service. Okay. Now, I clicked a link from the toolkit. I can click my back button. The only thing is you'll notice I'm clicking it a few times just because I kind of went up and down and such within the document. So it might, take a few times. So we're on the internet. We're in a web browser. Take advantage of those features. So I'm going to come down here and say we're in our standard documents and we're interested in a unanimous shareholder agreement. You'll notice we don't just have one blanket agreement either. So we have domestic or international joint venture, we have private equity investment, we have startup or early stage business, two-party emerging corporation, and there's also a declaration. So you can see we do have, and shotgun buy-sell agreement as well. We do have various ones. And as we go through, you may notice too, pro-purchaser, pro-vendor, that type of thing. So we kind of, give you both sides of documents.
Yeah,
so that's
there just to emphasize, and Allison did flag at the beginning the short form agreements and the longer form agreements. So we offer both, but the other aspect there is the perspectives, so that depending on where you're sitting from a vendor's point of view, purchasers, we really aim to try to have agreements that reflect or documents that reflect those various positions, which is a great advantage, of course, when you're serving a client to understand the necessary approaches to take. So
exactly. Perfect. Okay, so let's go into one. Let's have a little peek. So let's say we're interested in, maybe we're dealing with a startup or early stage business. I'm going to right click this time and take advantage of the fact that I'm using a web browser, and I'm going to open it up in a new tab so my toolkit stays open, and then I can just go up to the new tab and it's going to load up the document for me. Now some of them will have a table of contents as well. So you'll see that load on the left-hand side. There's also little arrows here. If you don't like it there, you can open and close it as you see fit. Okay. So now here it's letting you know it's a long form unanimous shareholder agreement, also known as shareholder agreement or USA, to be used in connection with a startup, etc. Maintained, standard document, Canada. Okay. Now as I'm going through here, look, it's the actual precedent, right? So I'm going to need to fill in these little areas and such. That's great. As you're scrolling down, though, you'll notice this little note, and that's those drafting notes that I mentioned. So not only are we just giving you a template, which is great, and you can pretty much see, what you need to fill in, but maybe you don't really understand that particular area or, why you're filling in certain areas. So read this before the document. It will let you know what type of document it is. It might, again, lead you out to the glossary or even to other documents within the system. Everything, again, is kind of connected. As I scroll down, as you can see, too, they're very thorough. It's a very long note, but assumptions used in this document. Significant minority shareholder protections, giving you some information there, other drafting considerations when you're actually drafting one of these types of agreements, etc. The scope of it as well. Then I continue down, I'm back into the precedent, and I keep scrolling, and oh, there's a note on the preamble. And then I can read a little bit about the parties to the shareholder agreement. Okay, and again, very thorough. Note on the recitals, note on definitions. So again, giving you a much better understanding, not just you filling in a document.
yeah, and I will say, over the years, I mean, how many of us you like to sort of pull a precedent and just get it out there and use it? But sometimes those precedents aren't the appropriate ones depending on the context. So having this type of analysis to go with your precedents really makes sure you're on the right track, and I think it's really helpful.
Now with them as well, you can, of course, use the document, but you can take those drafting notes with it. So if you want, print, email, or download as an example, you can do the document, a clean copy if you wish, or you can do reading view with the drafting notes. So that will come with all those notes for you, and it'll be just for your own personal copy to be able to kind of read through and understand again, those areas of the document. You can include the table of contents as well as that related content that I was mentioning earlier. And you can choose the format here when you're in reading view. So Word, rich text format, PDF. If, however, you're doing the document, we default it and gray it out. You cannot change the format. It's a Microsoft Word document. When you want that document, it's one that you want to be able to fill in. So we don't want you downloading a PDF and then not being able to actually use it as a template. So we do gray that out. Now, that being said, if you're wanting to use the document right away, you don't actually need to email, print, or download it at all at this moment. You can actually click over here on the right and say open in Word. So what it's going to do, it's going to ask you to save it somewhere. I'm just going to throw it into my downloads. And then I'm using Google Chrome. So you'll notice here down at the bottom, it's actually got the document loading for me. And I did open up Word, so it would take forever to load. So ta-da! And you will see you have the document all here for you, ready to fill in as you see fit. Okay, you can, for yourselves, if you go in like the first time, it's actually going to say enable or editing, I should say. So you will have to press that button to enable editing. You'll notice that these are all formatted. The little arrow is popping up, so it's all formatted in here for you. If there is something like an ABC or 1, 2, 3, of course, I'm in a whole bunch of definitions, so I'm just scrolling down here. So just so you can see, what if I want to get rid of I as an example? I can come in here, I can delete that, and then I has now become I. So it will adjust the formatting for you, which is really quite nice. Okay, so just wanted to show you that. I'm going to pop back over to Practical Law. On the right, again, actually this is not again, this one's drafting notes this time. So you can actually show the drafting notes. So not one at a time, you can actually show all. So as you're scrolling through, you're going to see them all open for you, or you can hide all of them, or you can actually just show the notes only. So again, just read through and get you really a great understanding of that particular agreement. Okay, and then there's that bell as well. So click it, save the alert, will notify you if any changes are made to this document. Okay. All right, now I open that up in a new tab, so I'm just going to close that. I'm going to scroll down. We have standard clauses as well. So let's say, the firm that you're at has a bunch of precedents. Awesome. You can use them. You can actually use our main ones too to update, say, the precedents that you have, or it might be missing a clause. So, you need a tag along rights clause. So you can actually grab the clause from here, copy it, and paste it into the one that you have at the firm, and you're done. Okay, change the formatting to whatever you need. Some firms like a certain font, things like that. So you can do that with any of these.
Of course, if you're in a very small office, and I have been in those as well, you might not have very many precedents at all to begin with. So you draw from something like this, and you're going to have a precedent bank built up very rapidly in your practice, and that's a real incredible leg up for hunting a lot of resources all over the place. So.
Exactly. And again, the drafting note's in there, so you're set.
Exactly.
Now, this particular toolkit also has a checklist, so we can have a quick peek at that. And I'm just going to click on it instead of opening it up because it's the last thing within the toolkit that I'm going to show you. So just wanted you to see what one looks like. It says this checklist sets out questions to consider when preparing a comprehensive shareholder agreement. So initial considerations, again, links to the glossary in there as well. There's some stuff on the parties in the background. Have you identified all of the parties? Do you have each party's contact information? Should the corporation be a party? So just things for you to think about, keep in the back of your mind, as you're going through this particular transaction.
And what lawyer doesn't like a checklist? It really helps, give
what
you that
person doesn't like a checklist?
I guess
general.
That's true, absolutely. But it does give you that comfort in practice from a risk management point of view that you are covering everything that you need to cover. And that really gives a lot of reassurance as you're going through different matters.
Exactly. Okay. Got governance here as well, shareholder approvals, etc. Okay. This one is bullet point form. As I said, some are charts, some are like an infographic style as well. So they come in different forms, but they're all incredibly useful.
I just saw a comment that checklists are a student's dream. From
oh, I love it.
So
I love it.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah. Or, honestly, student, it could be a legal assistant, paralegal, could be a newer associate, or even a senior associate that just has not, dealt with this before. It's maybe a new area for them. So having a checklist is, again, invaluable, but definitely great for students. Perfect. Now I'm going to return back to the homepage again for Practical Law. Because I was in the resource area last time, that's where it's sitting. I wanted to mention just a couple more features in a second, but before we get into those features, I do want to mention the search option at the top. Now, personally, I don't do a lot of keyword searching within Practical Law because we have what we call predictive text. So if you are looking for that shareholder agreement, as an example, if we kind of stick with our topic there, you can type in shareholder, and you'll see here, are you looking for this? And these here will do a keyword search, okay? But below it says practical law. And if I scroll down and I choose view more, these link directly into the documents right away. So if you know you're dealing with a shareholder agreement, hey, there's a toolkit. You know, maybe start in there. Maybe you're dealing with that shareholder protections that we were in earlier, that practice note. You can just jump straight there. There's also shareholder remedies. There's an overview practice note. Okay, it's a little bit more broad.
Do you want to pop open an infographic there, Allison?
Yes, actually.
Yeah, I see one shareholder.
Oh, there is. Thank you.
Yeah, just to give a little bit of a look at their format.
You could also type the word infographic though too, and it will load up various infographics, which is great. But yeah, so this is instead of that bullet point form or that sort of chart, this is more of a pretty graphic for you. So whether you are drafting or negotiating a shareholder agreement, Practical Law Canada ensures that you have all the bases covered. So if you're dealing with a sole shareholder, there's a unanimous shareholder declaration. You might need that. Two-party, a 50-50 shotgun buy-sell agreement. There's a joint venture. And then there's also that unanimous shareholder agreement two-party document. And then over on the right, we have the multi-shareholder, and then the documents that could be, again, useful for that.
Now, I think these are a bit of a wow factor. There's others in the system. They're seated all over the place, but they really give you kind of a one-stop look at everything. And you get, you know, as I mentioned at the beginning, those perspectives from each type of scenario that you're dealing with, and then all the different links there. So they're really quite interesting to use.
Mm-hmm. And they come, there's some that say step 1, do this. If this is true, step 2. It's a whole little flow chart, really quite useful. And if you're like me and a little bit more visual, it's a nice way to go for sure. And thank you for mentioning that, because I did want to show an infographic one. Perfect. Now you can technically do Boolean searching up here as well if you want. There's a little scope note over here. If you click it, it shows you the connectors that you can use. But honestly, I don't see a lot of Boolean searching being done in the service, because usually as you start typing, you're like, hey, that's what I want, and it's right there. Or maybe you're just kind of browsing through as well. Okay, so you can use it as a Boolean search. Everybody loves Boolean, right? So feel free, put stuff in quotes, / P for paragraph, that kind of thing. Or just type in a word and then see what pops up. You'll be good to go. Okay. Now, as I go down here a little bit, we've done a little bit of browsing in both by practice area and resource. We talked about all of the various types of documents within the system as well, and had a little peek at those. But let's actually go into those extra 2 features that are within the service. We do have a provincial Q&A and that what's market that I mentioned at the beginning. The provincial Q&A is actually a really unique service, and who honestly likes doing legislative research? Not me. It's not pretty. It can be very difficult at times. Now, granted, this isn't for everything. We do have it for particular areas. Now, you can actually read through texts if you would prefer. So by topic here or by province, if you wish to do so. But if you scroll down, we have this lovely compare the law feature. Okay. So this is actually really cool, because then I can click on this. I can choose what it is I'm looking for. So what am I dealing with? Commercial real estate? Am I dealing with corporate M&A, some employment, finance, or insolvency and restructuring? So let's say we're dealing with a limited liability partnership. Okay, so I can click on that, and then it gives us the questions that we can basically ask the service. So which professions or other businesses are eligible? What's required to form one? What are the formalities required to maintain the limited liability partnership, etc. So you can choose 1 or 2 or all. Then you can click on the select jurisdictions here in the lower right. And then you can say, well, we're kind of all over the place. So let's go BC, Alberta. We probably have some Ontario. Maybe we got someone in Nunavut. Who knows? Yukon. What have you. So you can choose whichever jurisdictions that you would like to compare. And then all you do is click on compare. And it brings up the answers for all of the questions that we asked. So question number 1, which professions or other businesses are eligible? For Alberta, there's the information. For British Columbia, for Northwest Territories, for Nunavut, and for Ontario. These are going to be alphabetical, by the way. You can also do all, and then just scroll through. That's Alberta. Oh, there's BC, etc. So it's going to go through the answers for you. Now, if I go to Nunavut or if I go to Northwest you can see, oh, I didn't know that. It doesn't provide for the formation of a limited liability partnership. So that's, good to know that you can't do it there. But over here, you can also go question to question. So question 2, Alberta, BC, etc. And you can see it's been maintained. So it's current, and there will be links to documents. And I didn't mention that actually before, but there will be links to, say, case law within Westlaw Canada, as well as legislation. It will jump you over to Westlaw Canada for you. And you don't actually have to have a Westlaw Canada subscription to be able to access just that document. You wouldn't be able to use other functionality in there, but you would be able to jump over to that case or that piece of legislation. Okay. Right-hand side, email, print, download. It's going to grab all the questions and all the answers for you, and you are set. Now, who doesn't love, legislative research now? Very, very handy. So feel free to use that, compare the law. It's under resources, and it's called Provincial Qa. Okay. Now, last but not least is that market analysis. We have what's market. Now, you can access it from here under the resources, or I had mentioned earlier, there is actually what we call, again, a widget for it. And this is like to get up to speed on the latest Canadian and US deals, agreements, and filings. So all I have to do is click on that. It's going to load up what's market, and then I can choose, do I want to look at the deal summaries, or do I want to go right into the market practice analysis? So I can do either. For today, I'm just going to show you that cool chart that gets created in the deal summaries. So let's say this time we are interested in IPOs, initial public offerings. So I'm going to click on that. And what it does is it brings up all of the deals, so 2,574 of them. And then on the left-hand side, you can see you can select multiple filters if you wish. You can actually do a search within if you wish as well. And you'll notice at the top, actually, you can do a search up here too. Okay. If I scroll down a little bit and I choose country, we do have US actually in here as well. But if we say we just want to limit to Canada, just check off the box and Canada will load. If then you're interested in the value, maybe we like, all the big deals. So $1 billion to $5 billion. And so we can check off the box there and load up, those 7 documents. Okay. If you want to look at one, everybody's heard of Kinder Morgan, I'm sure. If you want to look at one, it will give you the lovely summary for it. So, the issuer, the jurisdiction, the industry sector, the prospectus date, the total number of securities that were offered, all of these things that you'd have to kind of read through the deal and kind of try and find all this information. And it's quite a process, we will say. Underwriting discount, the syndicate, ticker symbol, closing date, and other points of interest, as well as links to the preliminary long form prospectus, the final long form prospectus, and also a Lexpert deal description as well. Depending on the document, you're going to have various links available. Okay, and that's just the one. So I'm going to click this little arrow here to the left just to return to my list. What if we want to compare deals? Well, all you have to do is select at least 2, and you'll see this little compare button will light up. Once you've chosen what you want to compare, just click on compare, and it will automatically create a lovely little chart for you. So there's the deal. There's the size of the offering for both, the closing date and links as well. Okay, but on the left, I can choose what I compare in addition to that. So who's the issuer? Was there a foreign private issuer? What was the prospectus date? Total number of securities offered, the lead underwriter. So again, you can just
say,
go ahead.
Just interject, having worked in the securities industry and as a regulator actually at TSX, you'll see that, the speed in which this material can come back to you is incredible. You'd have to do a lot of hunting and pecking in a lot of different areas through CDAR and et cetera to get these deal summaries so quickly. So again, I think a real leg up for access points and information.
Exactly. And the chart it's a little harder to read on here because we're in the internet. We've got like a bunch of different sort of frames going on and such, but you can email or download it, and you can send it to yourself as a spreadsheet, so Excel. And so it makes it a little bit easier to kind of handle. But before you do that, we offer the feature here to organize the columns. So if you want the prospectus date to be, up a little bit, we can do that. Maybe you want the closing date at the top, or you want to move it around. So you can move everything around, save it. It'll readjust the columns, although it's not too bad in Excel, but it's very fast in here. So you could readjust the columns and then go and email, print, or download. Email or download, my apologies, Excel, Word, or a CVS file if you want as well with Excel. Okay. So you have that option, but see how quick that was. Whereas, you know, downloading these huge deals, and then as Martin was saying, you have to, you know, kind of scrounge through and try to find that information. We've already pulled out the main information for you. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to return back to practical law. I'll just mention just a couple more things here. We do have that current awareness. I mentioned legal updates at the beginning, so you can always check out, you know, for your area, and you can set up email preferences for it as well. So you get like a monthly little sort of newsletter, lets you know new documents and things that are kind of going on. But, you know, if you're interested in commercial real estate and what's kind of going on in that area, then we have some various things. Now, there aren't that many documents in here that have a date on it. These are going to, because they're basically like an article that was published on, you know, a certain date. So when that particular sort of issue needs to be updated, we actually create a brand new legal update. So this one will remain on here, but then we will have a new one that kind of, it doesn't quite replace it, but it just tells you what's new at that time. Okay. If it has a date, you know it's current to, of course, that point. If it says maintained, it's maintained constantly within the system. Okay. And then, you know, I mentioned earlier too, we do have some automated documents, which you may again have heard of Contract Express before. When you click this, it loads them up. But as you're going through, and if you happen to pull up that particular precedent, it would give you the option to open up in Contract Express. We have a few in here. Martin, I'm not sure, I should count them one day, but I think there's about 20 or so, or maybe 20, 30 of them.
Yeah, there might be a little more than that, but
Yeah.
to the point, you know, they are sort of the AI type component to practical law, and obviously this only has potential to develop much further. But if you've dealt with document assembly before and programs like Contract Express, you know, you can build your documents through this system on a sort of step-by-step basis, as opposed to getting the precedent from the outset. You put in your, you know, requisite information, and it'll start to build the document for you. So obviously this is an important direction that the law has taken in the last number of years, and it will probably only continue to develop further.
Exactly. Now, when I'm in here, if you happen to have found this document either browsing or searching, it will have this sort of, I don't know, seafoam green. I'm not sure what color that is, but it will have this at the top. And instead of going to open in Word on the right-hand side and opening it up in Word and then, you know, changing the document, you just click on Start Drafting. It automatically opens up a new tab. It takes you into Contract Express. And it will bring the drafting notes with it as well, which is really quite nice. So again, you get that kind of explanation of the precedent as you're going through. And it will load.
You're correct, Allison, 32 documents.
Oh, there's 32. I was like, there's 20 or 30, but okay, 32.
Yeah,
excellent. Thank you for counting.
Yeah, I just double checked.
I keep meaning to do that every time and I forget.
Yeah.
On the right, you'll see a preview of our document. And then on the left, there's that read before. That's that drafting note. So if you read that and then you're done, you just save and continue. Then it, you know, hey, what's the date of the agreement? Say it's today. Well, it's going to populate it there for you. The name of the party, is it a corporation? What is the jurisdiction? Again, it's populating it so you can see it, fill it in. And then when you're done, you can save and close it. And then once you've done that, of course, you can then alter it. You can take out certain sections, or you could put other sections in that you want as well. But what's nice is it fills in this information automatically. You just fill it in, city, province, party, and then eventually save and continue and go through all of the steps and fill in the whole document and then save it. Okay, so it's kind of a neat feature. Again, open in Word is still there for all of the documents, but there are those 32 that do have the option of Contract Express, which is kind of cool. Okay, so that's there for you as well. Now, we have done a little bit of browsing, a little bit of sort of finding, searching using the search bar. We've talked about the Provincial Qa and What's Market and all of the resources actually. Are there any questions? Or Martin, did I miss something? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, no, you didn't miss anything else. And I think that there was one technical question there. Does the color of the inputted data change from blue to black? So I'm gathering.
I think that's in relation to the contract drafting. If you're
The
using,
Contract
the
Express
Contract
one?
Express.
yeah, in Contract Express, so that you can see
Like,
the bits that you've added in. So it'd almost be
good.
like a track changes.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
question.
You know,
I'm not 100% sure myself.
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, are there any other questions we can answer while I go and check this out? I'm just going to load it
Well,
again.
whilst we get questions coming in, I just want to say thank you so much. I did not know that you had that feature where we could compare all of the IPO deals. You have just saved me hours of my life. Hours, because
Awesome.
as a junior securities lawyer, that is one of the tasks that you are given on a regular basis, is to go and compare all of the different IPOs that might be relevant to whatever your client wants to do.
Yeah.
And now I can just pull up all the relevant information and we can figure out which ones are the most important for us.
Entirely agree, Siobhan. You know, you'll find that extremely effective.
Oh my gosh, I just
To pull that in a
yeah.
nanosecond, basically.
All the, yeah, I'm just, my billable hours are just going to go up and up and up now.
Woohoo!
I'm not doing this one. We did just get a question in from Jason Chan, and he asked,
Perfect.
does the platform have resources similar for immigration lawyers? Today we focus, I know, on corporate M&A and securities, but
Yeah, well, that question has come up before. There is some aspect for business immigration, and I think if you run searches and using that terminology, but keep in mind that the platform does have a really essentially a commercial focus at present pretty well. So you won't see family law, you won't see criminal, and you won't see immigration per se, but
Yeah.
you will see some areas in development for business immigration issues. I've run across that. So
we're always adding to it. We started out with, I think, 3 modules a few years ago, and now, you know, we're up to 9 modules, and we just added the insolvency restructuring. So you never know. I mean, that could certainly be added to it as well, for sure. Now, on the other question, I don't know if you guys noticed while I was kind of playing around, it does turn it back to, there's the date there. It's just black, the text. So it fills it in for you, and it matches the text colors, just showing up on the screen in Contract Express to kind of show you what you're adding to the document. But when you download it, it actually flips it over to that particular thing. Yeah. Now, once you're in here too, go ahead and, you know, change the font and stuff. Sorry, Martin.
I know I did want to just mention, you know, we've been giving you the focus because that's our bailiwick on Practical Law Canada. Keep in mind that there's a whole global resource section of practical law as well. So you can virtually look at so many sectors of the world in terms of the legal issues, and that could come in handy depending on your subscription service. So just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and the provincial Q&A, we have a country Q&A as well. Sorry, Siobhan.
I was just going to say, when I first started using practical law, now I'm going to age myself and date myself here, but back when I was an articling student in the UK.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah, a decade or so ago, practical law in the UK was relatively new at that stage in the UK, and even in the 2 years where I was completing my training contract, practical law just grew and grew and grew, and the content just developed. And I've seen that here in Practical Law Canada as well since I've been using it, that it's gone, as you say, from those first 3 modules that honestly, when it first started, it had like maybe 20 articles in it, to now a complete robust package of all sorts of documents. So it's one of those things, it's like, you know, if you see business immigration being, as an example, being a key area that maybe it's something practical law might be interested in, it's worth reaching out to them, because it's possibly something that if they get a few people requesting it, it's something that they could add to. But if they don't know people want it, then they won't start developing the content and bringing it on board.
Yeah, and that "what are you working on" channel is a great one to raise things like that too, because the editorial group keeps track of those, and then they'll be able, they start to see a pattern developing of a need for something. They start to think about
now,
it.
Martin and I can, of course, mention business immigration to head office, and we will actually after the session as something to maybe think about. But as Siobhan was saying, the more clients we hear from that, you know, request that kind of content, the better off, you know, or the better chance, I should say, that it will be added to the service. And that could be that sort of content, that module, but it could also be just even specific documents that you're looking for, you know, and think the service should have under the current areas that we already have too. And any functionality, like we listen, so feel free to let us know on any of our products. So not just Practical Law, but if you do have, say, Westlaw or ProView, we are, our ears are open and ready to hear what you guys need. Okay.
Oh, it's been great.
Any other questions? Are we good?
I don't see any more at the moment, but people, if you do have questions, you can drop them here. But as Allison said beforehand, you can contact Allison and Martin via their LinkedIn. You can also contact me, but I will blatantly just forward it on to the experts who will do a much better job at answering those questions for you. But they are the experts at this. They know the product inside and out. I am the ultimate worst user in the world, that I just stab buttons until I eventually find what I'm looking for. But I do find it really intuitive, that it's like using your phone where it has predictive text. You don't need to use Booleans on this one. So if you're not familiar with Booleans, which is where you have to add quotation marks and plus signs and ampersand signs and all sorts of things like
you don't
that.
have to have a degree in library science to use this.
No.
You don't.
Not at all.
This is kind of like the Googleized version, if we can use that word. I know we're not supposed to use other products, but it's kind of like typing into Google whatever you want and it will bring it up for you. And as I've gone through my articling and as I've become more senior associate, this is a tool that I personally go back to over and over again and find the drafting notes incredibly useful in terms of thinking about how the individual clauses apply to my client's situation, because although we start with precedents quite regularly, they're not always appropriate, as Allison mentioned earlier, and understanding how a clause is written and for the purpose is a really useful skill to develop as you're going through. And it's something that if you're not doing already, highly recommend you do it, because it will make you a better lawyer, but also just makes you a better colleague as well going forward, in that quite often I'm asked by my principal and my more experienced lawyers, well, why did you use that clause? Why did you use that phrasing? And this is one of those resources where if I've looked at it beforehand, I can actually have a coherent reason rather than it just seemed like a good idea at the time. Yeah. Because that's really not the best answer when somebody's asking you. No. But it also has great tips in there for explaining to clients why you're doing certain things in certain ways, because your client isn't necessarily going to be super experienced in this type of transaction either, and they're looking to you to guide them. Right. And I find those checklists and the toolkits can be really helpful in that regard, in preparing yourself to answer some of those questions so you can lead your client through the process. Now, I'm a securities lawyer, so I come at it from a securities mentality, but I'm often helping startups and emerging issuers through the process for the first time, or maybe they're going through it in a different format because they've switched industry and suddenly there's all new requirements placed upon them. And being able to reference some of these resources and just sort of pick and choose the bits that will help them understand the process then makes their job easier and my job easier going forward through the transactions as well, because they don't necessarily need to read War and Peace. They just need a short, quick and dirty explanation. And Cole's notes. Exactly. Cole's notes, Cliff notes, whatever you call them where you're from. But I find the checklists are really helpful for that, in that they can follow the process and it just gives them something to kind of bounce off of and know where we are as we're going through it and what the expectation is of them, because they don't often realize that to do this very small quick transaction actually requires 200 documents. So it's useful to have that checklist for them, but then also for you to be able to see where you are in the process as well. And you can also be proactive for your principals and for the other members of your team you're working on and say, hey, I know we've not got to this point yet, but do we need to think about this document? Because I see in the checklist there's this document, but we're going to need input from all these different people. Maybe we should start now so we can get all those people on the same page. And that can be like a winning point for you to just showcase that you're on top of this and you're thinking about things. It may be
look really good.
Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't like a little win every so often, right? Where you just feel a bit better on that one. So definitely check those out if you have it. If you haven't used Practical Law, I know most of you on the call at the beginning said you hadn't. I'm pretty sure that Allison knows a way for you to get a little taster yourself so you can play around with it. So I'm sure you can reach out to her and the team. But as she said, make sure you join the Facebook group. for Thomson Reuters, because that gives you all sorts of tips and tricks on how to best use all of their products. And also they give away some freebies, and who doesn't like freebies on that one. But yeah, if you have any questions, reach out to us. It's been lovely to have you both here today, Alison and Martin. Thank you for giving up your morning, your lunchtime for us. I've learnt lots. I'm now going to go play with it because I have a deal that's ongoing, and I spotted something and was like, oh, that might be useful for what I need right now.
Perfect.
That's
So
the idea.
Exactly.
This is why we do these sessions, and it's always good to come back and get a little refresher, not only because now I get CPD credit for it, but also you pick up little tips and tricks of how to do things maybe a little bit differently to the way you've kind of got in the pattern of doing it, and suddenly you spot something you didn't spot before. So please come back next time.
Oh, yeah.
It was lovely to see you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us. I'll post the CPD for you,
Thank you very
and then
much.
it'll be all set for you.
Excellent.
Pleasure to meet
Awesome.
everybody.
You too,
Yes.
Martin. No, it's been great. And we will post the recording on our YouTube channel. So keep an eye for Global Lawyers of Canada on YouTube, and we'll post it there. Be aware, I'm very slow at posting them, but we will get it up. And I will try and send an email to everybody who registered for the session so that you know when it's live for you. And it will also include, hopefully we can include the presentation, Alison, and if not, we'll definitely include the links to all of our contact details so you can get in touch with us. Everybody have a lovely weekend. If you're on the West Coast, try and stay cool as best you can. And everyone else have a good time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Take care. Stay safe.